Hello, welcome to Through Lucy's Lens weekly videos when I go somewhere interesting and hopefully you will find it interesting too. I have just arrived at my accommodation in Belfast, and when I decided to travel here, I thought, Lucy, you're not copping out, you're not just going to stay in a hotel. I often get emails of people asking me, is there anywhere I can go, anywhere I can stay, like a back-to-back house, somewhere where I can experience the social history that you talk about so much? And honestly, not really, because if we think about the conditions that our ancestors lived in, it's not necessarily how somebody wants to spend their holiday. Of course, there will always be some people that want to do that. But I looked really hard to see if there was somewhere I could stay in Belfast that had that touch of history so I could bring it to you. And I found, I can't actually believe my luck, a Titanic workers cottage. And this cottage was built in 1910 for the workers at the docks to build the Titanic. And I am spending 3 nights here. And of course, I'm going to give you a little tour. I've met the owner. He's a film producer and he's so passionate, told me so much history about the house. And what he's done is, as well as being sympathetic to the social history, he's also created like a Titanic fantasy world here. So as we go around the house, I will talk to you about it. But trust me, if you love social history, I'm sure you do, you're watching this video, and you want to stay somewhere in Belfast that's going to blow your mind, I'm going to give you a tour now. Just a heads up before I start, I paid for this, I found this myself, this is in no means sponsored, I'm going to speak honestly about it. But yeah, let's go on a little tour of this 1910 Titanic workers cottage. So welcome to East Belfast. Today I'm standing outside a house on Lisavon Street. It's a red bricked terrace house built in the early 1900s, around 1910, for the workers at Harland Wolff. Harland Wolff is the famous shipyard just over a mile from here that built, amongst others, the RMS Titanic. Most of us know the story of the Titanic, the so-called unsinkable ship, but I'd never really thought about the people who built her before, and as a social historian, this is why I wanted to stay here. In 1910, when the Titanic was still under construction, this street would have been full of men who helped build her. Riveters, fitters, carpenters and labourers, and of course the families they supported. Today, this house is a modern holiday let, with the downstairs to represent a worker's cottage and the upstairs a first-class cabin on the Titanic. It's utterly bonkers, if I'm honest, but during this video I wanted to show you what life might have looked like inside these thin walls more than 110 years ago. These houses were quickly and crudely built to house a vast workforce. And when you're in these houses, you're only one brick away from your neighbours. So I'm going to talk about what the daily routine of a shipyard worker involved and how this house would have been in 1910. So we'll explore the house, walk the route that many of the workers would have taken across Victoria Park to the shipyard, and finish up near the shipyard itself, where the Titanic, Olympic and many other famous vessels were built. The layout of this house is typical of thousands of similar homes across East Belfast. Originally, this house would have had just 4 rooms, 2 downstairs and 2 upstairs. There would have been no bathroom, no indoor toilet and no running water inside the house. Water came from a shared pump shared with your neighbours, and the toilet was out in the backyard, often shared between several houses. A coal fire would have been the only source of heat here, and the kitchen, which was really just a scullery, was where everything happened: cooking, laundry and personal care. Despite the small size of these houses, and they are very small, houses like this routinely held families of 6, 8 or even 10 people. According to the 1911 census for this street, it wasn't uncommon to find multiple children in one household, and sometimes a family would often take in a lodger, usually another ship worker, to help pay the rent. I found it really humbling standing here in this quiet, well-furnished room, being looked down upon by some of the people that used to live here. Some of the pictures on the wall were found in the loft of the house. I haven't been able to find out who these people are because due to unrest there was no census in 1921 here in Ireland, and there was no census until 1926, which of course is closed at the moment. I would love to be able to find out who these people were. But back then, it was humbling, you know, knowing that once this room would have been full of noise, coal smoke, children's chatter, and the scent, of course, of boiling laundry. At the time this house was built, Harland Wolff was one of the biggest shipyards in the world, with a workforce of over 15,000 men. The company had an international reputation for building some of the world's biggest and most advanced ocean liners, most famously the Olympic-class ships. That was the RMS Olympic that was launched in 1910, the RMS Titanic in 1911, and the HMHS Britannic in 1914. All three were commissioned by the White Star Line and built right here in Belfast, using a workforce drawn from local streets and local workers who lived in a house like this. A skilled riveter or shipwright might earn 30 to 35 shillings per week. That's about £160 to £180 in today's money, the equivalent of £8,500 to £9,500 a year. It was steady work and far better than rural labouring, but it was not luxurious. Unskilled workers in the shipyard earned less, just under £6,000 per year in modern terms. The hours on the shipyard were long and gruelling, 10 to 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, and the conditions were really dangerous. Falls, burns, crash injuries and hearing loss were common. Of course, there were no safety harnesses, hard hats, and certainly no paid sick leave. If you got hurt, you were out of work for good, and you could also lose the home rented to you by the company. Generations worked in the shipyard, and the prestige of helping build a ship like Titanic gave you a real standing in the local community. After the disaster in 1912, many Harland and Wolff workers felt a deep personal sadness. Of course, they had no say in the decisions made by the White Star Line or the British Board of Trade, but they still carried a sense of connection to the ship. From the house, I'm walking the route that the shipyard worker might have taken over a century ago, from here in Lisavon Street through Victoria Park and across to the gates of Harland and Wolff. In 1910, this walk would have been busy every morning. Men would stream across here at dawn, heading into a yard that never really stopped operation. They would be carrying their tools in canvas or leather satchels, along with a tin lunchbox, maybe with bread, cheese and a bit of leftover meat or stew from the night before. Today this area is really peaceful and I really enjoyed this walk. But then Belfast was alive with the smoke, sound and steel of a modern industrial port city. The Harland and Wolff cranes, which still tower over Belfast today, hadn't been built yet in 1910. The famous Samson and Goliath would come later, but the yard was still the heartbeat of East Belfast. It's incredible to think that from the houses like the one in which I had the privilege to stay, across these paths and streets walked the men who made history. They weren't the captains or the first-class passengers, but they held the hands who hammered the rivets, bent the steel, and shaped the ships that became the legends. I'm at the end of my 3-night stay now in the Titanic workers' cottage, and I've just been reflecting and having some thoughts that I kind of wanted to put at the end of the video. Now, of course, someone will pipe up and say, of course it's not like living in a Titanic, you've got running water. But there are things that I've experienced here that would have definitely given me an impression of the environment in which I've been staying. And the first thing is the noise. These are 1 brick thick, and you can hear every word that that neighbour says and that neighbour says. If they cough, they cough. I heard a whole conversation while I was lying in bed, and that just makes you think, well, if I can hear them, they can hear me. And one night I was trying to get to sleep. I've been going to bed really early, and there was a baby crying and a child running around and people shouting, and I was like, okay, so this has given me a really good impression of just how noisy living in one of these, particularly when there was large families all the way down, would have been. Second thing is light. Now, I've opened the curtain this morning, but in each of these rooms there's just 1 window, and it's quite dark. And even with the curtains open and the blinds lifted, it's still dark in here, which has been nice because it's been really warm in Belfast while I've been here. So when I've come back, it's still been freezing cold in here. But the small windows have definitely given that impression of making it feel more enclosed sort of thing. That's the best way I can put it. And at some points I've just wanted to go and stand outside because I found it all a bit dark. I think that's, I needed some light. So again, I guess that could build into that sense of maybe oppression, because this is small. I know when I use this camera, it's got a nice wide lens and everything looks big, but it's very small, and I've been tripping over things, just me. So again, when there was 12, 13, even 16 people living here, you can't even imagine how tight that must have been. And the final one is experiencing going through to the back of the house, to the bathroom. What a pain. First world problems, I'm highly aware. But when I'm upstairs, and when you go up the stairs and you have to lock the door, and you lock the door and you go up the steep stairs, and then you get to bed and you think, I need a wee. You've got to come back down again, get dressed, come back down again. And it's freezing in there, absolutely freezing, because it's right at the back. You go through what would have been the yard into the toilet. Yeah, fun times. I mean, you can't complain once you get to the bathroom. It's beautiful, it's mine, it's private, it's lovely, but it's a pain. So I guess it has given me I should have asked the neighbours if they wanted to use it during the week, shouldn't I? So people wouldn't be going, it's nothing like it. Should have got all the neighbours in. But yeah, it's been fun. It has been fun. Would I stay in a big old cottage on my own again? No. Because there have been times when I have been a little bit creeped out. And I don't think it's got anything to do with this particular property. It's my mind goes overdrive. It's a lot. Coming to a new city, new place, on your own. Tiny cottage, lots of people watching you all the time. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. It was just a bit of fun, something a bit different. And I'm going to go back to England now, and I'm going to research the heck out of these people, because I need to know who they are. And it would be really lovely if even the owner of this property could reunite these pictures with their original owners. We will see. To the archives. Have a lovely day. I'll catch you soon. Up till the next one. Bye-bye. If you love social history and want to support me, please do subscribe. I appreciate every single one of you.